What's up, guys? Specstar here today with my draft recap for the LD draft. I just recently got this wrapped up, and now I'm going to recap the Pokemon I've taken and talk a little bit about why I took them and what I expect their role to be on the team, should I say, this season. Now, my first pick here was Zygarde, and Zygarde I had 7th, and the 6 Pokemon I had above it went picks 1 through 6. So with the 12th pick, I was pleasantly surprised to be able to grab Zygarde there. Zygarde is a Pokemon people have very mixed reviews on. You'll find a lot of strong opinions on both sides, but it's a Pokemon I like because it's a very threatening setup sweeper. It has good priority, pretty decent bulk, and it did quite a bit for me in my FDL run. And Zygarde is going to cost me 16 points, and it's going to be my first Z user. I've got, in this draft, I should say I have 115 points total, and 30 for Z users, and I went with Zygarde for 1, and I'll talk about my next later. For those of you who don't know what this Pokemon does, it is just a little move here called 1,000 Arrows, and it's the best move in the game. That's what this thing does in a shell. So next up here, I have got Tapu Bulu, and this is a Pokemon that synergizes very well with Zygarde, which is why I wanted to grab it here. Bulu, of course, the main thing it does, set that terrain, heal Zygarde up. Also a nice little fairy for the little Fairy Steel Dragon Core I got going on. Plus Zygarde comes in and takes on the poisons and steals that Bulu doesn't like. Bulu pressures out the bulky waters that like to deal with Zygarde, so the two go very well together, especially with Bulu basically cucking a lot of the ground moves, but none that Zygarde use. So that's going to be my pick there for 15 points, Tapu Bulu. Next up, I'm going to round off my Fairy Steel Dragon Core and get my second and my last major Z user, should I say. I've got another one that's not very significant, but it's still one, I guess. So here, I've got the Cobalion, and Cobalion is A, as I mentioned, rounding off my Fairy Steel Dragon Core. B, helps with my speed tiers until I take the next pick, which I have there. Then the speed tier thing becomes less important. But a lot of steel types in this leagues are, I don't know if you call them overpriced, but they're priced high. A lot of the steel types. Cobalion was not one of the ones that are priced that high for what it's worth, so I was happy to grab it here in the 3rd round before I was forced to overpay for a steel type, which was not something I wanted. Very nice to get up rocks for Bulu and Zygarde. It gives me a switch in on Ice type, which I desperately needed at this point, and it's going to be my next Z user, and Cobalion can be a very sneakily dangerous Z user, and it can also perform defensive functions, so it's a Pokemon I've got high expectations for and I'm a big believer in, and we will see how it does this season. Now next up here, I'm going to take Blacephalon, and Blacephalon was a product of me getting sniped on Victini, Infernape, and Heatran, which I would have taken instead of Cobalion in that 3rd spot, except they all went in the round between my 2 picks. And, well, that's drafts, you know. You just kind of got to play the hands you dealt. And I went here and I grabbed Blacephalon. Main reason I grabbed Blacephalon, well, A, it helps with ice, and B, I've got Earthquake Weaken for it. But mainly, I just think at 13 points, this thing's very reasonably priced. It can be a very annoying Pokemon to prep for, although it, of course, has that Blatant Pursuit weakness I have to be careful about. But this Pokemon against a lot of teams as a matchup has the potential to be a real menace, and it's a Pokemon you need to be very ready for. So that's why Blacephalon there. Next up, I went and I took Nidoking, and this is a product of Nidoqueen being sniped, which I really wanted, and I just went and I grabbed Nidoking. Nidoking, A, it helps me with hazards, gives me a T-Spike absorber. B, it's pretty nice with the speed tiers. and C, it can kind of help me get a sticky web thing going on, which I was thinking about at this point in the draft already. Thinking about getting a good web user. And Nidoking is just going to give me another good special attacker, which I only had Blacephalon, so that helps. And another answer, it gives me my first answer to electric that isn't 4 times weak to ice. I definitely want to put no pressure on Zygarde to be an electric answer. That's part of why I took this Pokemon here. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and take Blastoise for 7 points in the 6th round. And a large part of why I took Blastoise is I think 7 points is a very reasonable price for it. This is a Pokemon I usually see going 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that ballpark. And at 7 points, very reasonable. It gives me a bulky water, although not the most reliable one. But it also gives me my first little bit of hazard control, which is very nice since I have Blacephalon. And you always want to have some sort of control. That's definitely something to think about. Blastoise, it's an interesting wall because it doesn't do one thing particularly great, but it does everything well. It's got both defenses pretty good stat-wise. It's got decent attack stats, decent speed for a wall. It just kind of does everything. Its coverage is phenomenal. I mean, it has freaking everything. Focus Blast, Earthquake, Haze, Ice Beam, a lot of utility moves too. I mentioned with Haze, Reflect, Dragon Tail. This Pokemon has an insane move pool, and that was one of the allures to it. So that's my 6th Pokemon. Let me move over to my last 5 here. Oh, that is not what I meant to click on. That is my Jumpluff team. I guess that now's my time to plug that live. Okay, but next up here, I took Leavanny in the 7th round, and it is actually going to be my final Z user with my last 2 points. Now, Leavanny is pretty early to grab it. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't pretty early in the 7th round to grab a 2-point Mon, but the main reason I did is I did not want Leavanny to be sniped, because 2 points, really cheap for Leavanny. And it's not like Webs users were cheap across the board, because Galvantula costs 10, so Leavanny at 2 points, that's a steal to me. This Pokemon generally 4, 5, 6 points. That's where you're going to see it. So for 2, I went and I scooped this thing up. And Z-move, mostly useless. There's one little thing I can do, Buginium Z, and then I can go for a Z Sticky Web, and it doesn't do too much. The Buginium for Sticky Web, nothing too important, but what it can do is, if they taunt me, Z moves go through taunt, go through encore, and I can just kind of get up my webs through a taunt by going for a Z Sticky Web. That's one of the things it can do. With Baton Pass rules, I'm not able to pass Agility, but I can pass something like Swords Dance. That's an option for me. Something to keep in mind for this thing, I guess, throughout the season. Calm Mind too. I can pass those. And next up here, I'm going to take Eelektross, and a big part of why I grabbed Eelektross, as much as my team is a grassy terrain team, my ground answers were not looking very good at this point, and it helps with that. But mostly B, I didn't have anything really for flying, since my Steel type Cobalion wasn't resistant to flying. And Eelektross is going to give me a good answer to a lot of the flying types. It's also going to give me a little bit of special bulk, since this thing runs a great Assault Vest set. And this Pokemon, if you haven't used it before, a lot of what it does, it's got decent attack stats and pretty good coverage, mostly special coverage. You always want to have something like Volt on it. Super Fang's real nice on an Assault Vest set. Rock Slide, Knockoff, Giga Drain, Flamethrower. This thing really is insane coverage, and with its bulk, it can really have coverage for anything, take hits and deal out some damage, and that's kind of the allure of taking the Eel there. And plus, 8 points, not bad for it. And next up here, I'm going to take Musharna, and this is going to be another it gives me a little bit of bulk, which my team really did not have aside from Blastoise. And B, I can do some baton pass shenanigans with this thing if I want. Curse, Calm Mind, I can pass those. Doesn't it get barrier? And does it get barrier? It does get barrier too. So there are a few different things this Pokemon can pass, and that's one of the allures to it. It also sets up screens. Heal Bell can do Cleric Work, Healing Wish. It's just an interesting little utility Pokemon for 5 points. I thought that was a decent deal for it. Get some bulk on my team. Gives me the potential for some baton pass shenanigans. I can throw off some powerful gyro balls on some things. Sky's the limit with this Pokemon. Has sneakily good coverage. Gleam, E-Ball. Well, needs an electric move, I'll give it that. Does need an electric move, a better one, but it's pretty good coverage-wise, and a pretty good wall for the price. Now, next up here, this ain't too big of a surprise, except for the fact that it was available there in the 10th round, which is pretty crazy. Hawlucha wasn't initially part of my plan, but I kind of got my points in order at the end by taking a 2, 8, and 5 point Mons in a row, freeing up 13 points for me to go out and grab Hawlucha, which, of course, with the Grassy Seed and Bulu is just just a very dynamic pairing. And if you don't know what this Pokemon does in 2018, you have not been playing enough Pokemon as of late. This thing gets its unburden, gets off of Swords Dance, and this thing is suddenly fast and powerful as hell with great stab typing. Now, lastly here, I went and in the last round, I went and grabbed my Mega. Everyone aside from me, as of round 7, had taken their Mega, so I was able to sit back and just get my Absol in the last round. And Absol at 11 points was just really good value to me. There were some decent, well-priced, lower-tier Mega threats, and Absol was one of them. This Pokemon, very threatening. It actually helps out, what was it helping out with? It helps with things like Nido, things like Kobo, which don't like dealing with bulky Psychics, and basically my team doesn't like dealing with bulky Psychics too much. I can pursue them, I can knock them, I can make them a sucker. And this Pokemon, of course, very threatening sweeper. I can do Swords Dance. Hey, I could do Calm Mind, and I could even pass both. So this Pokemon definitely, if you let it get the right leg up on you, you make a switch out and it catches you with the right setup move, it's really a threatening thing to deal with. Sneakily good special attack and coverage there. Very good speed. And this Pokemon just, for 11 points, pretty good value, pretty good threat. And this is going to be my team here. It's definitely more offensive than I like, and it's a little bit out there. I got sniped pretty good in this draft. Rotom W, the 3 fires that I wanted, Nidoqueen. But I think I was able to scrap together something here. And the team is definitely more offensive than I usually go. I'm by no means a bulky player, but I usually like to have a nice, thick defensive core in the middle of my offense. And in this team, I'm actually kind of putting myself in a position to be creative in how I play defense. And I think that's just going to actually make for a fun season for you guys, and especially for me. No, for me and especially you guys. That's how I gotta be thinking here. But that's going to be my team here. Zygarde, Tapu Bulu, Cobalion, Blacephalon, Nidoking, Blastoise, Leavanny, Electros, Musharna, Hawlucha, and Absol. And I haven't been having too many league games lately, so I haven't had that many of them to put up on YouTube. But I've got this league starting, and UNL Season 3 is going to be starting soon, and I'll have a draft recap for that too soon. So I should be getting better at having videos and draft league games to put up for you guys. And that's going to be it for this video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Have yourselves a good night.